On my mother's 80th birthday celebration, my stepdaughter rose from her seat, lifted her wine glass high, smiled brightly, and labeled me my husband's retirement arrangement. I waited for my husband to speak up in my defense. Instead, he met my gaze directly and declared, "She is not your daughter. Do not correct her." In that exact instant, something deep inside me turned completely quiet. I quit trying to secure a position in a household that had already concluded I was nothing beyond an available source of funds. My name is Evie, and after the death of my first husband, I devoted 12 years to reconstructing my existence. When I wed Grant, I felt certain I had discovered love once more. I opened my arms to his daughter Madison, even though she never fully embraced me. I covered her university fees, vehicle payments, insurance premiums, phone charges, monthly spending money, and many additional costs because I believed that was how a family operated. I imagined I was assisting a young woman in shaping her tomorrow. I had no clue I was bankrolling someone else's falsehoods. The day following that catastrophic birthday meal, I sat by myself at my kitchen table holding a mug of coffee and almost 2 years' worth of bank records. As I tracked every single entry, my heart dropped. Thousands of dollars marked as school-related costs had never arrived at Madison's college. Nearly $30,000 had been diverted into Grant's struggling company. By the moment I finished totaling everything, more than $84,000 had vanished from my accounts. That was the point when I halted every automatic transfer, took Madison off my credit card, shifted my earnings into an account under my sole control, and resolved I would never overlook the figures again. Grant burst into the kitchen insisting on knowing what I had altered. I merely rotated my laptop toward him and stated, "You informed me she was not my daughter. You are her parent." His self-assurance faded the second he viewed the bank documents. Rather than addressing my inquiries, he claimed everything was complex. The sole truly complex matter was monitoring all the deceptions. Within a few hours, Madison telephoned because her credit card had ceased functioning while she shopped. She charged me with dominating her through finances, and shortly afterward Grant's family members began phoning to criticize me for deserting a youngster. Amusing how she transformed into an innocent child solely when another payment was expected. For years, everyone applauded my open-handedness, yet the instant I ceased covering costs, I turned into the antagonist. As I investigated further, the reality grew even more troubling. A lawyer uncovered that someone had attempted to list Grant as the proprietor of one of my investment accounts by means of a falsified signature. The application did not succeed, but it demonstrated that a person near me had been seeking entry to my reserves. Around that period, I discovered Grant had been discreetly contacting my customers and neighbors, informing them I was growing absent-minded and emotionally unbalanced. He even left a recorded message proposing that one of my longest-standing clients ought to substitute me before my recollection became an issue. Fortunately, that client had spent years looking after his spouse through dementia and instantly identified Grant's scheme. Instead of accepting the claim, he preserved the recording and delivered it to my lawyer. For several weeks, I held myself responsible. One evening, I sat alone on my basement steps weeping, questioning how I could have been so naive. Then my sister recalled something I urgently needed to hear. She said I was not foolish. I had merely longed to experience love again after the loss of my first husband. That solitary remark removed a burden I had carried since the facts started emerging. Then an event occurred that I never anticipated. Madison requested a meeting with me. She confessed her father had deceived both of us. He had persuaded her that I intended to bequeath my residence and company to him, and had even urged her to endorse a declaration asserting I was fully aware of the destination of the missing funds. Instead, she presented me with duplicates of his messages, confirming he had been scheming to seize control of my assets from the beginning. For the first time, I ceased viewing a spoiled young woman and began perceiving a daughter who had spent her whole life accepting whatever her father claimed. Not long after, Grant's previous spouse verified he had pursued the identical approach throughout their marriage, employing other people's resources to resolve his personal monetary troubles. Everything suddenly became clear. I had never been his equal partner, I had been his remedy. When Grant understood I was submitting papers for legal separation, he abruptly turned into the ideal spouse once more. Bouquets arrived, he prepared meals, he heated towels for my sore hands. For a short time, I nearly accepted his change. Then he set refinancing documents before me, requesting that I pledge my house as security to salvage his company and settle Madison's unpaid school fees. When I declined, he committed the gravest error of his existence. He measured himself against my late husband and asserted Paul would have assisted. That was the instant I tossed his flowers into the garbage and understood I was completely finished. 1 week afterward, we appeared at a Business Leadership Awards midday gathering, where I was scheduled to present Grant before he received one of the greatest distinctions of his professional life. Instead, I stepped onto the platform and quietly stated that I could no longer permit my standing to be employed to back monetary choices I had never authorized. I disclosed that I had uncovered deceptive financial shifts, filed for legal separation, and asked for a detailed financial examination. Grant promptly attempted to brush me aside by announcing to everyone that I was confused and emotionally overloaded. Then everything collapsed. One of my longest clients rose and played the recorded message in which Grant challenged my mental competence. The entire room fell quiet. Shortly afterward, Madison rose and acknowledged that her father had misled her too. She verified I had never consented to leave him my house, my company, or my inheritance. Nobody clapped. Nobody yelled. People simply recognized they had been hearing a man whose complete reputation rested on falsehood. Before the gathering concluded, his leadership distinction was formally delayed while his behavior underwent examination. The divorce process continued for nearly 12 months. A financial investigator followed a large portion of my missing funds into Grant's collapsing company. I regained a portion of my reserves through an agreement, although legal expenses absorbed more than I had ever anticipated. Grant ultimately forfeited his company, sold his expensive automobile, and vanished from the prosperous existence he had labored so diligently to display to others. Madison resumed her studies through student loans, secured employment, and gradually reimbursed every personal cost she had placed on my credit card. Gradually, we reconstructed a careful connection founded on truthfulness rather than expectation. Concerning myself, I restored my residence, reconstructed my financial position, and at last absorbed the principle that transformed my existence permanently. Kindness is an offering, not a duty. Affection should never demand abandoning your discernment, and open-handedness should never turn into another person's retirement arrangement. Reflecting on it, the supreme triumph was not observing Grant forfeit everything. It was understanding I finally ceased surrendering my dignity to maintain someone else's comfort. Occasionally, the most powerful retaliation is not ruining the individual who exploited you. It is simply declining to finance